With under 3 weeks left before the Oklahoma primary election, campaigns are taking shape and some are getting nasty. Joining us today to discuss the issues that are shaping this year's races are Ted Struley, editor of the Journal-Record, Patrick McGuigan, editor of CapitalBeatOK.com, Cheryl Lovelady, former political pollster and strategist and OETA election analyst, and Nate Webb, former congressional chief of staff for Mary Fallon. Welcome to Oklahoma Fourm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Pat, we've been seeing television campaign ads for a while now, and some of them are becoming sharper. Let's look at the U.S. Senate race first, the unexpired term of Tom Coburn. What is the ground where that race is being fought on?
It's a good question. It's philosophical as well as literal ground, and I think I'll start with the easier part, which is the ground literally. I mean, Oklahoma City will be Langford's strongest area, the 5th district. Tulsa, I think Shannon may be pretty strong, but Brogdon's going to show up there, and that leaves southwestern Oklahoma where Shannon's strong, and the balance, I think it's going to be a very close race. Philosophically, these are shades of difference. You know, Alan Drury wrote a novel when I was a kid called A Shade of Difference, and it had metaphorical meanings, and that's really the case with these guys. You range from a 100%er to maybe a 90%er in terms of conservatism, and one of them will be the next senator.
Cheryl, dark money groups have been big players in that particular race. How does that work?
Well, you know, there used to be limits on campaign spending and campaign donations, but now with 527 groups, the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, money is flooding in and campaigns are turning into the Wild West in kind of a big way. What's happening, what I think the result is that candidates have the luxury now of staying very pretty on their own ads. They go up and they talk about their families and they talk about the wonderful things that they do. The contrast then has to come from the outside groups, and they're coming in a very negative way, but voters are only getting the differences between the candidates, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far this year, from those outside groups, and they don't know if they can trust them.
And it's called dark money because they don't have to disclose who they are.
That's true.
Where they get their money. Nate, T.W. Shannon has publicly urged those groups that are supporting him not to go negative, but in reality, what is the relationship between these outside groups and a campaign?
Well, officially there is no relationship. There can't be a relationship between the two. But logistically, it's the best of both worlds, because as Cheryl said, the outside groups can go ahead and take the swing, and the candidate can not only distance himself from that, but also be appalled and gee, I wish they wouldn't do that. At the same time, you know, under the table going, yes. But in terms of official interaction, they're not supposed to do it.
Ted, he is not on the ballot, but from the ads in various races, including the U.S. Senate race, it would appear that President Barack Obama is running here in Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, that's an ad that funded by one of those dark money groups came out with that they're supporting T.W. Shannon. It's an anti-Langford ad that's criticizes him for some votes during his term in Congress and sort of paints a picture of him being allies with the president. T.W. Shannon put out a statement on Thursday, exactly as Nate just suggested, criticizing the ads, saying they wish everybody would keep the advertising positive and stick to the issues and kind of what you would expect them to say. But there was a pretty good Photoshop image of Langford and Obama put together.
Usually campaigns veer to the extremes in the primary and then will moderate some for the general election. Is the anti-Obama approach something that will sustain throughout this election season?
Well, I think in November they're going to all want to look like Tom Coburn, and they might want to follow Tom Coburn's example, which is a very charitable one and generous towards the president and vice versa. You're right in your basic premise, and that's why I think you'll see some preparation at least done to get ready for a general election campaign where, you know, if Connie Johnson's the nominee, there'll be a clear choice. If Rogers is the nominee or somebody like that, there won't be. But at least Oklahomans can have a debate that way.
That's Jim Rogers you're talking about, who's a perennial candidate in Oklahoma.
Unfortunately got the nomination a couple of years back.
Well, you know, and that's the big thing, isn't it, in a lot of states, is winning the primary and then rushing to make yourself more appealing to the general electorate. But it's not not quite as much of an issue here. Once you get through the primary as a Republican, you don't have to run to the center quite so much.
Well, I agree, and the president remains wildly unpopular in this state, and so there's no reason to take him off the ballot, so to speak. So I think they'll just continue to use what works. Candidates, you can always predict that they will use what works, and that polls well.
Well, I think, and it's a good point that was brought up a minute ago, I think we're going to see, thanks to Citizens United, right, a lot of the dark money ads can take that tack, that can attack the president, can be the anti-ads, while the candidates can smile and take maybe a more favorable approach.
Well, everybody hates hyper-partisanship, and they complain about how Washington is dysfunctional and everybody hates each other and all of that. Has that decision and the rise of these exterior third-party groups created more animosity among candidates because you can just take a free swing at people?
Everybody always says they hate negative campaigning too, but it's not going to end anytime soon because it works.
Yeah, the problem is that you've got it's not a problem, it's a blessing. You have a First Amendment. It's hard to imagine a regime as they tried to create for a while to dramatically control the content of political advertising. You really can't do that. You have to replace bad speech with better speech. And maybe that's one of the roles we can exercise in the media is, hey, could we ask a question about an issue here?
Well, I agree. I think the question is, how long does this being against something play out? The voters are going to eventually say, okay, we get it that you're against the president, you're against Obamacare, you're against all of this. It's time to hear what people are for, and I think that that's where some of these candidates are running very, very thin right now, is that the time is going to come when voters are going to demand more.
What are the issues? Let's take the Senate race. What is an issue in that race?
Personality.
Other than personality.
And style. Style is an issue, and I think Langford can make a pretty good case for some tenure, especially compared to Shannon in terms of sponsoring a lot of things, working with people on the other side of the aisle, even while being definitely and absolutely a conservative. And even Brogdon can make that case with a couple of his bills. Shannon, it's a little thinner. So if people are looking for a great speech maker and they're looking for talking points, they might go with Shannon. They'd go with Langford if they want a little more red meat, I think. That's the way I look at it. And the issues are differences of scale, not necessarily of